Well, aloha, everybody. I'm here from Kona, so that explains the slightly longer hair for those of you who were wondering. And I love coming to the big city. I always feel like too loud. All right, well, is that better right there? Okay. I'll do this, and I'll just make sure that I always have the right distance. Yeah, so I always feel like, who remembers the Beverly Hillbillies? Yeah, I always feel like that when I come to Honolulu from Kona, which is bizarre because I grew up in LA. But I've been here in Hawaii for about 17 years, and I started as a client of my firm. We're a national firm, Natural Investments, and I started as a client with the first $1,000 that I ever saved when I was 23, so that was 26 years ago. And in 99, I became their third advisor, and then 10 years ago, I became one of the owners. And we have 12 offices around the country in 9 states and 3 in Hawaii. Unfortunately, not in Honolulu, but we've got 2 on the Big Island and 1 on Maui. And I'm not opposed to having an office here in Honolulu, but it just hasn't happened yet. And we manage about $350 million to change capitalism. Anybody here want to change capitalism? Yes, let's change capitalism. I'm a recovering anti-capitalist myself. What I do is I'm in recovery. That's what I like to tell people. And, trying to figure out how to channel, capital into something that can create the society that we all want to live in. And that is a very daunting task. But you can probably tell that even after 25 years, I remain incredibly optimistic. And the reason for that is consciousness is evolving. I can feel it. Just look at what's happening here today. A lot of it is driven by young people, which also gives me hope for the future. And I just retain my optimism, even while there are insane problems with the system. And I'm fully aware of that. I study it and am immersed in all the ethical scandals of the financial system. But I remain an optimist. And so I'm here to share my optimism with you, to let you know what you can do to reflect who you are with your money. It is inherently value neutral, right? Money can be used for awful, evil things. And money can be used for beautiful, wonderful, powerful, impactful things. It's really a choice, and it has to do with what you are aware of. And what I find is that even after 25 years, 16 of which have been as an advisor, people still don't know that this is possible. And that's why I'm here. And I appreciate the invitation to be here. So I'm going to talk about several things, sustainability and resilience. I do have copies of my book, The Resilient Investor, in the back if you're interested afterwards. And I'm even happy to sign them. If you think that I will one day be very famous, you can say you knew me when. So I've been doing this for 26 years. I've created a lot of different entities here in Hawaii to try to support the green economy, and including the Impact Hub Honolulu, which just got a grant and aid from the legislature to get a permanent home, and that is a social entrepreneurship center. A lot of my clients, they want to invest locally in green or responsible startups. Well, how do you find them? So we're creating a center where those businesses can be incubated, and then the investors can easily find them, because a lot of them, of course, are going to look for capital. So in addition to what I'm going to talk about today, which is the publicly traded realm, which is where most people invest, we're very committed with some of our accredited clients in trying to build a local sustainable economy. And Hawaii is totally ripe for this. There's so much going on in sustainable agriculture and renewable energy and clean technology and a lot of other clean and green sectors here that are very, very exciting. So one of the other things that I do is I'm a lobbyist at the national level for my industry, and I serve on the National Policy Committee for the sustainable investment industry. And I'm not paid to do that, but it means that I spend a lot of my time meeting with Congress, meeting with the SEC to try to change corporate behavior. And I'm going to get into that a little bit. Of course, the big thing we want right now is disclosure of corporate political contributions. So part of what owning sustainable, responsible, and impact investments, it's a political act, because you're essentially owning things where people like me literally will go to Washington on your behalf and try to get them to have a spine and rein in the abuses of the corporate system. And that's very difficult right now in this environment. The Democrats have really very little power at all to try to get regulatory reform to happen. But it's okay. We have to just keep doing the right thing and try to, at the same time, help companies see the value of changing their ways. A lot of them just don't realize that they're missing out on a huge customer base because the values of the customers are really changing, and they're not really aware of it, and they're just kind of sitting in the dark. So we try to enlighten them and help them see the light and make the business case for sustainability, because it's a very strong business case. I'm going to get into that in just a minute. So I have about 8 hours of material that I'm going to do in about 45 minutes, so that's why I'm talking at the speed of sound. So one of the things that, just so that you know, is that we walk our talk. How many people have heard of B corporations? All right, a handful. So a B corporation, this is like, you've heard of LEED for green building, LEED standards. So this is like triple bottom line business standards. So by triple bottom line, we mean social and environmental and financial performance. And it's B for B corporation means beneficial. These are companies that are beneficial to society. So it's a certification, just like LEED. Homes can be certified, and we were a founding B Corp 9 years ago, which means we operate with this very standards that we're trying to promote out there in the world. We walk our talk big time. So that's really important. These are the B Corps here in Hawaii. You may recognize some of them, and others you don't. We don't have enough of them. If you're interested in this, go to bcorporation.net, and you can see the assessment and the criteria. Any business can apply. You just have to really look at how do you treat your employees, what do you do for the community, what about your customers, the environment, and if you do a minimum of really awesome things in all those categories, you too can receive this recognition as being a sort of a best for the world type of model for capitalism. And that's ultimately what we need, is people need to be inspired of what's the high bar. You know, it's very easy for us to say, oh, stop doing this and stop doing that, and you know, but where do you want to, where's this bar to be raised in terms of optimal performance? And that's what the B Corporation represents. It's the most rigorous standard I've ever seen. And we've been a member of Green America, the national organization, for 25 years. These B Corporation standards are even higher, stronger. You know, I think sustainability is one of these things that, 25 years ago was still an unknown kind of idea. And now I sometimes wonder if it's lost its integrity, because, Barbie comes in sustainable packaging now. So I'm a little bit confused about what has sustainability really become. There's a lot of greenwashing, as we like to call it in our industry. And so one of the things that we really try to do is really try to make distinctions between what's a light shade of green versus what's a dark shade of green. It's a big green umbrella, but there are many shades. And when people come to me, I listen very closely about what shade of green they are, because people care about different values. Some people care about social issues. Some people care about animal issues. Some people care about environmental issues. Some people care about all of it, and they want it all to be reflected in what they own. And it's really an issue of people getting clear about, well, what are your values? And what do you both wish to avoid as well as support? All right, so we've written 3 books over the last 25 years. So yeah, we are very, very committed to this. So what's this idea of regenerative or high impact? It's integrating financial, social, and environmental. So we want impact in all 3 areas. We don't want to make money at the expense of society and the environment. We don't want to just care about people on the planet without caring about financial return. I get this question a lot. Oh, you must make a lot. Your clients must earn a lot less money because you're not just focused on making money. And it's like, well, no, that's not true. That's a mythology. But we are not just solely focused on maximizing financial impact. And, as I will demonstrate a little bit later on, companies that care about people and the planet are proving to be more profitable. Why? Because they are better managed. They are internalizing what economists used to call externalities in economics, like, the environment. And we are seeing the consequences of that flawed logic, which is the depletion of all of the resources on which our entire economy depends. So we don't operate this way. This is the new vision for capitalism. I hope that someday this is the norm, and dirty, evil capitalism will be this thing that used to exist. And people are like, wow, you guys used to do that? How awful. Yeah, I'm a dreamer, so that's fine. You know, I'm going to hold on to it. So, what are some of the specific values that we see that people say, all right, I want to invest in a certain way and have certain values reflected in my portfolio? What are the issues? Well, on the environmental realm, you can see here the list of a lot of the different issues that people care about. And I would say that organic food and renewable energy are the two ones that sort of rise to the top. And but at the same time, you can see here there's all kinds of things that people care about: recycled products and natural fibers and GMO-free this and that and green building materials and anything non-toxic and biodegradable. I mean, this is definitely the trajectory that we're going to, and the way we expand this part of the economy and make these products cheaper is to continue to invest in them. And that's whether, in terms of how we shop, but also investing in these companies so that they can grow and expand and get bigger, because as they scale, they can then lower their costs and their prices to consumers. And that way, I don't know if Whole Foods will ever turn into anything other than Whole Paycheck, but even so, I think, oh, you didn't get my joke? He got my joke. He got it. Thank you, man. Thanks for laughing. Appreciate that. All right, so let's look at community, because what we're looking for is companies that really, care about the community. They're buying local. They are giving to the community financially. They're involved. They're making a difference. They're sponsoring events like this. They're involved in making sure that they're preserving culture. They're buying fair trade products that are not exploitive to labor standards around the world. They involve their employees in service to the community. We all know companies like this who have a heart, and it's really important that we honor them and we recognize them and we support them, because these are the ones that, again, are setting the high standard. And this happens at a small level. It happens at a big corporate level. We have access to this kind of information so we can figure out who really does care and who's just giving it lip service. Same with your customers. Ways to really build relationships with customers and value the feedback that they give you, and really provide effective, high-quality customer service through a variety of incentives and discounts and payment plans and all kinds of things, even sliding scale opportunities based on people's different income levels. We're seeing a lot of innovation out there in the system, which I think lets people know that we don't have to just do things the same way all the time. So companies that really take steps in this direction are ones we single out and really try to prioritize for investment. What about your employees? Your employees are your biggest asset as a business, right? So we look for companies that are really involved and have really progressive policies and really value their involvement in decision-making. They're less hierarchical. They really care about morale. They invest in their people. They care about working conditions, et cetera. And, they're the opposite of exploitive. They are really cherishing and valuing and investing and supporting in their people, because they recognize that happy employees make a really high-functioning company. Okay, so what are some of the issues that are most popular? So when most people think about, all right, what are my values and how do I want to layer that into my investments, these are typically the things they want to stay away from. And that's usually where people start. And it used to be that people would come to me and they'd say, just get me out of Walmart. Now it's get me out of Monsanto. But there are also many other issues that people care about. Sometimes people have identified a specific company. It used to be Halliburton, or Walmart or whatever. And sometimes it's just an issue. Sometimes people don't want to own anything related to fossil fuels. That's actually the number one issue right now, especially for millennials who are inheriting a lot of money. This is their apartheid, if you will. Apartheid was the primary issue of my generation in the 80s, was avoiding companies doing business in South Africa, propping up that regime. Now we're seeing people want nothing to do with fossil fuels. Kind of makes sense, kind of a survival instinct thing. I'm happy that they care about our survival. These are definitely some of the more popular ones. And then, well, I want to move on. All right. Nope. Let's move on to the positive stuff for the sake of time. So these are the common things that people want to invest in that we see as a trend nationally. And a lot of it is sort of deep green, which you'll recognize, whether it's the organic foods or the clean tech or the renewable energy. But a lot of it's social, too. Things like public transportation, things like affordable housing. So sustainability is not just about the environment, right? We're looking at social justice too, and we're trying to alleviate poverty through investment. And this is not necessarily done through charity. This is done through investing in things like affordable housing. The more of it we have, the better, right, for society. And investing in projects that are owned by certain marginalized populations, whether that's indigenous tribes in this country or women-owned loan funds, or other types of culturally specific mission-related community development financial institutions like credit unions and venture capital funds that are owned by and investing in people of color, investing in low-income people specifically as a mission. And this type of mission-related community development finance is something that doesn't really get a whole lot of play. But it's a great way to take your money out of a big bank that is investing in God knows what, and really targeting your capital into loans to people who really need the money, and who really need to empower themselves, start businesses, get into home ownership for the first time, as well as community facilities that really can support the community. So, there's so many positive things that we can do with money. So I bring up the fossil fuel-free investing because it's the most popular portfolio that we have right now when people come to us. We're excluding the research, exploration, production, and distribution of fossil fuels. And some even take out cars and auto parts and things like that. And the other thing that some people do is we will sometimes have these campaigns where we will buy up temporarily ExxonMobil stock or Chevron or something just in order to give them hell. Just in order to say, hey, we own you and we would like you to acknowledge, that climate change is real. Hey, big oil company, would you care? It's kind of that sort of thing. But you have a very different attitude as an owner. You actually have leverage as an owner. When you own shares, and what we do as an industry, we're a $7 trillion industry. So when we all decide to go buy up a fossil fuel company, it's millions of dollars of shares. So they will take a meeting. And that's what you want. You want a dialogue. You want engagement. Ultimately, these are just people. And I'll share some success stories right here because I've been involved in several things personally on behalf of our industry that just, could just move the needle on corporate behavior. We got Home Depot to no longer sell old growth timber. They didn't used to have that as a policy. So we took them on and said, look, you've got to do sustainably harvest timber and definitely not old growth. And they agreed. It took us a year, but they did agree. Same with Kinko's. I don't know if you know this, but they only use recycled paper now. That was not always the case. So we just try. Of course, eventually, hopefully, we won't need paper. Seriously, and then Costco, we helped them develop a sustainable seafood policy, and perhaps not the topic for this event, but the idea was that, get them to stop selling endangered species and to have higher standards in their procurement. They, reduce the farm-raised, high pollutant content, and move over to wild and other reforms. And again, after a year and a half with them, we were able to persuade them to adopt a policy. So when you're an owner, and you can do this just by owning shares of a socially responsible mutual fund for as little as $250 or $500, and that fund is doing the activism, along with folks like me, where we're just saying, hey, Costco, we'd love to see you guys take a look at this issue. What do you think? And it's super non-adversarial. We're just like, yeah, we're owners. We love you guys. We'd like to see you, are you willing to look at this issue or that issue? It's really fascinating stuff. And as you can tell, this is the part that really excites me because I'm in this for the social change aspect of it. And the only way you do that is to get companies to see the value in changing the way they operate. I mean, avoiding companies because you don't like them it's a feel-good personal statement. I don't want to own fossil fuels. However, that's not necessarily going to make Exxon become the leader in renewable energy just because you're avoiding them. So we have different strategies here, and avoidance matters. It's so super ethically distasteful, but engagement also matters. And we also want to reward the deep green companies that are helping us make the transition to the economy we want. So you can see here that it's a multifaceted strategy: avoidance, affirmative, engagement, and things have to happen at all levels. Oh yeah, and policy, regulatory framework to hold companies accountable and to help them to mandate that they acknowledge environmental, social, and governance factors in how they operate. We're working on that really, really hard. So these are our national advocacy priorities, just so you're aware, and this is what I spend a lot of my time doing. We want to overturn Citizens United. That is number one. Corporations are not people entitled to individual rights. I couldn't believe Hillary Clinton the other day said that she would, if elected president, propose a constitutional amendment to this effect. I'd never heard her speak that radically before, but I guess she realizes she needs to get the more progressive vote. But that would be something. It requires 3/4 of the state legislatures, of course, to create a constitutional amendment. So that might take a while. But I think that would be an important step. We also want all corporations to have to report on sustainability and certain standards and whether or not they are measuring up. We think investors have a right to know what they own and how those companies are operating, because if you're not acknowledging environmental issues, your company is at risk for whatever could happen to you as a result of your ignoring those issues, whether that's climate change or whatever. So if companies are not taking that into account and really doing strategic long-range planning in how they operate, they are vulnerable. So as investors, what we're saying is this is material information. You have got to mandate this. And right now it's all voluntary. It's not mandatory. So it's something we're definitely working on. Of course, another issue we're working on right now is we want to require the disclosure of political contributions. This is another thing that could have reputational risk for a company, right? I won't use wireless service at Verizon because I know how much they contribute to the conservative side of the political equation. But imagine if that's just kind of inside professional knowledge that I have. Imagine if all companies were required to disclose that publicly, then you all would know that, and you could make a decision about whether or not you wanted to own that company. And that's the kind of thing that we think really matters, and we've been begging the SEC to require this. It is, as you can imagine, there's no consensus in Washington at the moment. All right, we also want to, as you know, the financial downturn from 8 years ago, we have not fixed hardly any of the problems of what caused that meltdown 8 years ago. And all the risk-taking and derivatives and all the crazy, excessive, high leverage, all this stuff that was going on, it's still going on. It's still going on, and that's because the Republicans in Congress want to just treat the economy like the Wild West. So we are continuing to try to put pressure on them. Nothing's going to happen until the Democrats take over one of the chambers again in Congress. And then we want a sustainable and responsible investment option for federal employees in their retirement plan, and that's something that we're trying to work on. There's a bill in Congress right now, and I'm meeting on Monday with the guy who runs the state of Hawaii employee retirement system to do the very same thing. Because I think that I've talked to a lot of people who work in government, and they would like the option. You know, it's not sort of telling them to do it. It's just saying, here it is. If you want it, here's a menu of choices, and it's a way for public employees to have their values reflected. So we'll see how sympathetic he is. I was part of a group here that tried to pass a bill to mandate that the ERS divest from fossil fuels, and that didn't go over well because the ERS was not supportive of the idea. So I'm going to work on this guy. I'm going to see if I can turn him. I can be fairly persuasive, but you have to do it. You have to be in the right attitude so that you're not seen as threatening. And you have to show research, and you have to make the business case. You have to say, look, this is not a breach of fiduciary responsibility. These are the words that trustees like to throw around. And that comes from this old paradigm that fiduciary responsibility means sole focus on financial return, the maximum financial return. It is an antiquated, obsolete way of looking at economics, as I've been trying to say. And but it's tough because the people who are in positions of power and authority and leadership in this country were brought up under a different regime, a different philosophy. They don't understand triple bottom line capitalism. They don't recognize that it's legitimate. And so it requires a lot of us to build a bridge and help educate them and help show them the research and help them see that this is not threatening. This is not an effort to divert attention away from financial return. It's an effort to include and transcend it. and include other factors that are just as important, and I would argue help contribute to positive financial return. I'll show you some proof of that, but in a minute, I mentioned community investing. This is stuff that's, generally speaking, outside of the stock and bond market. But again, these are a lot of the organizations or the types of entities that are recirculating capital locally and really helping regular people. You know, when you invest in a big bank, and I'll include the 3 big banks here in this state, the money is going all over the world, and you have no idea what they're investing in. You really don't. It could be investing in nuclear power plants somewhere. It could be, I'm not saying it is, I'm just saying it could be invested in all kinds of things that you don't necessarily agree with. A lot of these institutions, however, they're only really investing in their members locally, as well as in the communities in which they operate. And they, so I'm a big fan of this. I'm a big fan of community development investing, and all of our clients do it. And about 10%, so we have about $35 million of our client assets are in this, are in these realms. And again, this is not charity. We also, for certain clients, do private equity and debt with startups, if you will. This is the high-risk money. This is for the people who can literally afford to lose it all because startups fail. And so, but this is where some of the deeper green, kind of exciting, high social impact enterprises are. And I mean, just right here down the street, you've probably all heard about the Honolulu deep seawater air conditioning thing. Well, that was an investment that came up maybe 8 years ago, and they came to a bunch of us looking for investors in that to get that going. That's the kind of sort of high, impact local investment. Renewable energy is a fairly easy one to do here in Hawaii because it's a high demand industry. But I get phone calls every week from businesses looking for money. I must have ATM tattooed on my forehead or something. But there's a lot of exciting things out there that are really happening, and it's exciting. I've just listed some of the examples here, so that you can get a feel for it. And most of the young people, most of the young entrepreneurs that I see, millennials, are social entrepreneurs. And they just have it in their DNA. There's not some huge leap of faith that the old people have, where they have to be persuaded that environmental and social issues ought to be integrated. No, they just think this way because it's how they've grown up. And it's super exciting. I get really turned on by that because they just get it. It's just part of who they are. And that's what gives me hope that eventually we're going to evolve as a society. I think it's inevitable. And I'd like to do it before there's more crisis. That would be my preference, that we kind of avert catastrophe. I don't know. Call me crazy. Okay. So, let me just go to the... So the United Nations did a study. They studied 30 studies, academic and investment group studies. 90% of the studies, 27 out of the 30, showed that when you integrate environmental and social factors into your financial decision-making, there's either a neutral or a positive correlation. What that means is you do not sacrifice return when you think this way and when you act this way. And this is a study of 30 studies done by the United Nations. And you can see the title of it. It says Demystifying Responsible Investment Performance. Because again, there is this idea out there that's been floating and promulgated by the likes of the Wall Street Journal that, if you're not owning the most profitable industries at all time, which are things like weapons, tobacco, alcohol, and porn, then you must be not caring about financial return, And you can make plenty of money in investing in all kinds of better things. That's the thing that people don't get. You don't have to own the whole economy to make maximum return. You just don't. And the economy is really big. There's plenty of things that you can support that are not distasteful. There's a lot that you can do. So here in Hawaii, here are some of the things that we see. I mentioned a few earlier, like renewable energy. These are some of the things that are really popular. Hawaii with the 2050 goals that they have, and 100%, renewable energy self-sufficient, and there's this desire to become more food self-sufficient in this state. Well, the only way we're going to do that is by increasing our production. and start being producers and not importers of everything that we need to survive. So anything that we can do to invest in creating that reality is something that I hope you all share with me as an important goal. Our vulnerability is fairly high, so anything we can do to increase our self-reliance as a community makes a lot of sense, particularly as it relates to the reliance on fossil fuel. Some of the vehicles that we're seeing here in Hawaii to do this, I've just listed a few of them here. There are some other, some Kiva Zip has these are web-based. Anybody heard of Kiva? So kiva.org. So kiva.org, this is a platform where you can do peer-to-peer lending, basically. And so, traditionally what this has been for the last 20 years is you can go on there and you can see somebody who's a farmer in Zimbabwe, and you can see what your $500 would be invested in. It would help that person buy some sheep or some seeds or whatever it is, and you get a nominal return. You get, you don't get rich off this stuff, but you get, 1 to 2%. Well, it's not charity; it's an investment. But so Kiva has started making that platform available to local entities like Kuleana Microlending and the Kohala Center. And I just heard Slow Money Hawaii is about to launch it in the next couple of weeks. And that's investing in slow food systems. Slow Money is a national entity with chapters all over that we're just launching it here to invest in the local food system. So it'll be all online. And then you can get to know the profiles of the entities that you're supporting. And you can do this without a financial advisor. Now you should probably know how to evaluate, what you're looking at. And that is what I do for my clients. But it's just really cool that technology is coming into play, especially here in Hawaii. Because, again, how do you find these opportunities? How do you know who needs the capital? And how do you know that they're a cool business? And how do you know that they're that it's a prudent investment? So it's very exciting to see that. And Hawaii Angels, this is for the high net worth angels who are really doing a lot of the big money investments. The ones that are doing the huge scale renewable energy projects and the big farms and the larger scale products, and a lot of the biopharmaceuticals and things that have intellectual property. High risk, so definitely not for regular people, but it's exciting to see. All right, so in the sake of time, which I have 10 minutes, I want to mention my book, which is on the back table, because what we do is we place this idea of sort of corporate, sustainable and responsible impact investing into a larger framework. Because as much as I've been a huge fan of sustainability, and I often describe sustainability as my first true love, conceptually, and we've been in a very long-term committed relationship for the past 30 years, but I'm ready for an open relationship because I have found resilience, and resilience is my new love, my new sweetie. And I'm not giving up on sustainability. Sustainability is awesome, but resilience seems to matter because we live in a kind of crazy world right now. And just holding on to sustainability alone might not be enough. This is actually a military term, VUCA, which I think is really interesting. The military is actually doing almost all of the strategic long-range planning about how climate change is going to create geopolitical consequences. Now, they're doing it from a perspective of what are the threats to our country, but really it's about what are the threats to society, to global human civilization. And these are the adjectives that they're saying is going to be our new reality. And I think a lot of us feel this way on an emotional level. Certainly when the downturn happened and it looked like everything was going, to fall apart, we really notice it. And volatility in the economy is also at all-time highs these past 10 years. And a lot of people are very nervous about it. So what we decided to do, instead of just writing another Investing with Your Values type book, is write about resilience and cultivating those qualities. We still want the social and the environmental and the financial to be there, but we need to be ready for four possible huge scenarios that might happen. Because this whole sustainable green economy stuff is plodding along, but it still might not be enough because we still could have the breakdown scenario. We still could have the long emergency where we have these abrupt problems, a collapse of certain societal institutions. We could have a huge chunk of the Arctic or the Antarctica fall off and create a huge major sea level rise event, right? We could have catastrophes. We could have a breakthrough reality all the way on the opposite side of the continuum. We could have some kind of consciousness, transcendent, collective, whatever you want to call it, and vibrate into the fifth dimension. And we could, you know what I mean? We could have a breakthrough in technology. We could solve cold fusion. We could figure out a way to not need fuel for energy. We could have some breakthroughs, right? We could also just muddle through, up or down, you know? And some people think that this is really more of where we are. We're sort of muddling through, and there's shades of green emerging, but we're having all these systemic problems that are kind of dragging us down. So what we think is really important is that you think about, where do you stand? What do you think is going to happen? I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen because I don't know. And anybody who thinks they know, really you probably shouldn't listen to, because the truth is we don't know. So, but your worldview should be a part of how you make all your financial decisions, right? If you believe that society is collapsing and about to break down, you should not be invested in the stock market. I'll just say that right now, and you will not become my client. Right? Because if you think it's all a house of cards and it's just a bubble waiting to burst, don't do it. Invest in other things. Invest locally. Invest in your own personal, situation. Invest in community development financial institutions, right? Conversely, if you're a breakthrough type of person and you want if you want the green economy to take off, invest in that. Invest in everything green you can imagine to help bring it forth faster and accelerate the transition. So you see what I'm saying? Your worldview should be integrated. Okay, so resilience is this quality about anticipating the volatility and all the disturbances and preparing so that we can withstand any shocks and so that we are able to rebuild when those shocks hit and then hopefully evolve so that we don't have those problems again. And so that's, to me, why resilience is a very different way of thinking and a very different mindset than just thinking about sustainability. So I'll just really quickly, to sum up, in the book we outline the different types of assets that we really do have. What is your real net worth? You do have personal assets. We all have them. Certain skills, certain relationships that we have, certain things that we do with our time, ways that we learn, ways that we give to society through work and service. There's also the tangible stuff of life. These are our assets that we also have, our home and how we shop, locally and in the corporate system. And then nature itself is a huge tangible asset, the ecosystem. And then we have financial assets, which can be local, and they can be stocks and bonds and some of the stuff that I've been talking about, or they can be the micro funding and the crowdfunding stuff that you see about and all the high social impact. So what we did is we decided, look, these are all the assets. Let's put it all together onto a map, and this is our resilient investing map. And the idea here, and this is the core thesis of the book, is that if you really want to diversify the way you are investing, you should be investing in all three of the asset types: your personal assets, your tangible assets, and your financial assets. Right now, investing is just limited, for the most part, to this one little box down here called stocks and bonds and funds, and that's what most people do with their money. And what we're saying, even though this is not great for business, is don't just do that. That is not properly diversified. Your whole life is so much bigger than that. And if that financial system can't be reformed, and it does have major hiccups in the future, you want to be protected, right? You don't want to have all your eggs in that one basket, because that one basket could really face a lot of uncertainty and volatility moving forward. I think the habits and the returns that we've all been used to, I think we should really question moving forward, because growth on a finite planet is diminishing. We are not going to be able to keep doing what we've been doing. So we have to wise up and think about, all right, well, what else can we invest in our own lives and in our communities too, to complement and supplement the investments we're making in infrastructure that is, local and global, as well as big corporations, which we can't get rid of, but at least we should change that whole system and give it some consciousness, right? Give it some ethics, give it some values, help them see their supply chain, help them stop abusing labor, help them treat the environment more respectfully. And while doing that, also investing in yourself and all of your relationships and nature itself. So there, in the book, we go through each of these 9 zones, and with examples. We have examples on our resilientinvestor.com website where you can just see what we're talking about. Obviously, this is a brief overview, but it was our effort to sort of say maybe you should wean off Wall Street a little bit, even while trying to help Wall Street become a darker shade of green, which is certainly what I'm doing. But it can't solve everything, and nor should it. And so the real resilient life really requires you to assess where you are in each of these 9 zones and then think, what could I be doing in each of these 9 areas to cultivate that capacity? And we think, our theory is that will make you more resilient and able to tolerate this crazy VUCA world that we live in. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. We have time for some questions. The question was, what are the risks involved, the variety of risks? And it's just like any other type of investing. We have small, medium, and large companies, international, infrastructure, bonds, government agencies, and people can be very conservative in how they invest. They can be super aggressive. They can be somewhere in the middle. So it's the same type of investing that people, I think, are used to doing. It's just we have this filtration system that determines what's in and out of the portfolio. But we're held to the same standards as any other investment advisory firm. We're regulated by the government, so we have to. Well, what's really nice is that when I started, there were only 12 mutual funds in this space that you could own 26 years ago. Now there's 250 across all the categories, which is really nice. You can have a real diversified portfolio.
On the positive side, do you have a list or a screen that you can use to determine the companies that are the most unsustainable?
Yeah, see, I subscribe to very expensive research services that do all that work. In terms of what's publicly available, yeah, that would be a great project for somebody. There is one app that I know of called Good Guide, and it's an app, and it has a barcode reader. You can go into the store and you can read the barcodes on a lot of major brands, and up will pop the social and environmental information about that company with a grade. And that kind of thing is kind of new. I think it's been around a few years. I like that idea a lot. Because a lot of times you're like, what is this? Is this company a company I can believe in? Who's rating them? So yeah, I think that is slowly coming. We actually do this for all the sustainable and responsible mutual funds, and we just give it away for free on our website. We call it the heart rating. For those of you who do investments, you probably know about Morningstar that rates funds on financial performance from 1 to 5 stars. Well, we rate all the funds on a heart scale of 1 to 5 hearts, depending on the breadth and the depth of their social, environmental, and governance criteria. And we literally give them questionnaires, and we have this relationship, and we say, how do you pick your companies? Tell us the specific criteria that you're using, and then we grade them. And so we tend to look for the ones that are 4 and 5 heart rated funds, as opposed to the ones that just weed out tobacco, and that's it. They count, right, because they're weeding out tobacco. But that doesn't go far enough for, I don't know, most of us probably under this tent.
If you have a 401k, like with an old company, do you have funds you can move that to without any tax liabilities?
Yes, if you have an old 401k, you can create a rollover IRA under my or anybody's management, and then those assets just transfer over without any tax consequences. They're just managed outside of that retirement system. So yeah, it's called a rollover IRA, and anybody can do that. Yeah, totally. So I have my book. I'll sign them if you want. Thank you so much for coming today and being here. I appreciate it. Much aloha to you.